California repeated their dominance over the Indians in the 1899 contest, but not before the big game's greatest tradition was established, that of the Stanford Axe.
The axe is a great symbol of the California-Stanford rivalry. Actually, the axe was originated at Stanford. They fashioned it for a baseball game in about the year 1899, I think it was, and that became one of their trophies.
Stanford and Cal at that time had been rivals for seven years. We had a baseball game in the spring, and our mascot went down to the hardware store and purchased an axe, a planer's axe, to use to chop up. And the reports vary at this point whether it was an effigy of a bear, the symbol of the University of California, or whether it was some ribbons of blue and gold. But it was intended to do some damage to a symbol of Cal, and the Cal fans at the game got very upset. They stole it from him. They mobbed him after the game, stole the axe, and there was a long chase through the streets of San Francisco, and eventually, at the end of the day, the axe made it over to Berkeley, is safe in the hands of the Berkeley students, and they proceeded to put it in a bank vault where they left it for 30 or so years, only bringing it out on the occasion of the baseball game between Stanford and Cal.
An uncle of mine whose name was Jack Eppinger, who was a Berkeley student at the turn of the century, was about 5'2" or 5'3". He did tell me, as a matter of fact, that he was the one they dressed up as a girl when they stole the axe and they had to cut off the handle. That's one reason that you see the axe now without a long handle, and he put it under the skirt that they had him in, and he's the one who took it back to Berkeley.
I go back to a day in 1930. I believe it was after the big game that year, when the California Committee was taking the axe back to the bank vault to protect it. And Stanford apparently had a determination to recover the axe, and they had a committee, 15 or so people, and they dressed themselves up as photographers, and they all had flash bulbs and cameras, and it looked like they were the genuine thing.
Some Stanford students, which we delightfully call the Immortal 21, had planned to get the axe back. For 4 years at Stanford they planned, and finally came the day, their senior year, that they were finally able to get the opportunity, and they said, we'd like to take a picture for the paper. They had dressed up as reporters at this rally, and they said, could the crowd clear away? We'd like to take a picture for the paper. And they set off smoke grenades and some other devices to scatter the crowd. A couple of their members grabbed the axe, and then what ensued is again not clear, but somehow the axe reappeared on the other side of the bay down at Stanford.
Subsequently, the two schools agreed that they would make the axe a symbol of the big game, and it would go to the winner of the big game, and they would keep it until the next big game, and if the other team won, they would turn over the game, and they did that always in a ceremony after the big game.
In 1904, 14 years after its inception, the big game left San Francisco and moved on campus, first to Berkeley and the following year to Stanford. Going into the 1905 game, Stanford held a slight edge in the series with 6 wins, 4 losses, and 4 ties. But that year, Cal was favored to close the gap. Unbeknownst to players and fans alike, this would be the last football big game played between the two schools for the next 14 years. Stanford upset the favored Bears by a score of 12-5, but the Indian celebration was short-lived. Soon after the game, their president, David Starr Jordan, and Cal's Benjamin Ide Wheeler decreed an end to American football for the two schools. Each had become concerned over the injuries and violence that resulted from the game. Their solution? Ban the sport from both campuses. But the spirit and tradition of the big game continued on. For the next 9 years, rugby replaced football as the annual contest between Cal and Stanford. During that era, the Indians held a 5-win, 3-loss, 1-tie edge over the Bears.